Viagra Boys have released their brand new album, and it is called Viagra Boys. Viagra Boys. I guess it makes sense. It is out of the gate. First thing I want to say is amazing. I have been obsessed with this album, and there's been a lot of good music that's come out this week. This album came out on the same day as Ghost's new album, Skeletor. I prioritized Ghost for many reasons, but I wish I was a little bit quicker on this review because I have just... I don't know what it is. This album has just infected my brain. I cannot stop listening to it. Every single track, if you ask me, is a banger. There is no dud. It's just infused with this, like, creative, weird, like, surprisingly introspective chaos. Like, it sort of looks on paper and feels, I mean, this is actually just a good analogy for the whole band, like it should not be as coherent and clever and thought out as it is. But if you listen to it, there is not a step missed. Their keyboard player feels like he is having a seizure in the direction of some keys for pretty much the whole album. But you know what? It's actually perfectly controlled chaos. Same with the saxophone. It's the same with every aspect of it. It's just such a unique blend. It like dabbles its feet in being kind of like metally at points and quite punk rock, but then it goes all the way to the other side where you get quite classic rock feels to it. I feel influences from a bunch of bands that all, you know, strive across various different subgenres, and it just blends together to make this unique, cheeky, introspective, clever, critical piece of art, to be honest. And then you look at the the music videos for something like Man Made of Meat, which, even though I think is probably at least intended slightly less as a full critique of the music industry, the music video says everything you need to about it. It's got this, like, you know, idea that people have this ridiculous perception of art and creativity, and these guys are just genuine. They want it to be back in the old days where you could just sing into a microphone and channel your heart, and sometimes you tell a crazy story about falling in love with an ancient bog woman, and other times you have this really long, deep talk about how your wife has saved you from your more, I don't know, sin-filled lifestyle, I guess you could say. It spans the whole thing, so just, if you want to stop watching here, now is the time to say just go out and listen to that album. You will not regret it. But let's have a slightly more in-depth breakdown, starting with production. It's really good. It's like a really weird soundscape to try and make sound coherent, and they really well do so, because there's quite a lot of times where it feels like I said before, the saxophone, the keys, they all just kind of go crazy in the background, and they make these quite sort of soundscapey vibes for several tracks specifically, but, you know, across the whole album, to be honest. And yet there is organization to that chaos. Each part sits very nicely within its own EQ bracket. The saxophone, the guitar is actually really interesting, because Sebastian, the singer from the Viagra Boys, he mostly has quite a deep, like, sort of standard singing voice, and especially when his delivery is quite conversational, it means it kind of hits lower in the sort of EQ spectrum than a lot of artists, singers would. So the guitar absolutely makes up for that one. It keeps the entire thing, it sort of sits much higher and does less kind of like crunchy grind work, which is left for the bass. But again, everything kind of balances itself out perfectly, from the keys to the synths to the bass guitar to the vocals. It's really, really well put together. There's a couple of really, really nice instances across the album too, where there's a female backing vocalist who I'm assuming is not part of the band. She must have been a session musician of some sort, but she just comes in. I don't think she even really sings much in the way of harmonies. She just often mirrors Seb's vocals just up an octave or two, and it's just so well handled. His chef's kiss, it adds that kind of poignancy, but I guess I'm probably escaping the edict of production. But yeah, no, across the board, don't get me wrong, it's not like one of those miracle of sound, like carnival level, like super complicated grindy guitars and all that, 1,000 layers. There's like 5-6 instruments across the entire album, but they're very well handled. It's really well put together. Production is definitely up there. Moving on to lyrics and themes. This is definitely one of Viagra Boys' strong suits. Sebastian is just such an amazing frontman. Like, it's genuinely some of the most creative stuff I've heard in a really long time. Again, things like the songs like Uno 2 and Bog Body, which were both released as singles, which I'll address in a bit. But the lyrics on those songs are so wild. I mean, Bog Body is literally about him falling in love with a corpse, leaving his wife for this corpse, and his wife being mad at him for it, etc., etc. where? Like, oh god, this is going to show how much of a weirdo I am now, but the only thing I can think of that's even close to that is a very, very shocking film called Necromantic that I promise you should not watch. I watched that when I was an edgy teen and I regret it to this day. But then like something like Uno 2, which I think I read or saw somewhere was inspired by either Sebastian's dog or one of the band members' dogs having to lose a tooth now to the vet, and that's sort of like influencing that dog's lifestyle from now on, and that is where we get, I found a crouton underneath the futon, which might be one of the greatest lyrics to have been written in the last 20 years. But then that's mixed in with some of the more like heartfelt sad songs like Medicine for Horses, which has multiple like really creative but like heartbreaking instances of him basically saying he wants to kill himself or wanted to kill himself at least. And everything in between that when it comes to his sort of like self-analysis, talking about the rest of the sort of music industry and society as a whole. Like those lyrics span a lot of subject matter, and they're all handled with that tongue-in-cheek, those weird little turns of phrase. I mean, Sebastian being a Swedish American with sort of like having grown up equal parts in both places has meant that his like idiolect and like slang terms they're very eclectic, and that's a very appealing aspect of his delivery. And also, interestingly, he barely rhymes, and with the exception of lyrics like futon and crouton, I guess, but generally speaking, if you go through and listen to a lot of these albums, they're very conversational. They're barely even half rhymes, if I'm honest, but it speaks of a band, of an artist, of a lyricist who very much prioritizes the actual content of the words themselves, and if he can sort of shape them to rhyme, he does, but it's definitely not the deal breaker, that he prioritizes the story he's telling. And I think that, again, that's somewhat unique in the modern day sense, maybe less in the sort of like more punk rock, alternative rock spheres, which I'm not that familiar with. And if you're going to go like deep underground stuff, I thought Viagra Boys was underground until I saw freaking Justin Hawkins interviewing him. You barely notice. That's the thing. I did not really notice until my girlfriend pointed out that he's actually not rhyming for large portions of that, but it's fine because the storytelling is so charismatic. It really does feel like it's just down the pub with him, and he's telling everything for, the conversation as the booze takes hold goes from wacky to sad to wacky again and everything in between. So lyrically, thematically, this album is amazing. It will touch your soul. It will make you chuckle. It will do everything in between. Sebastian Murphy is one of the most cool and unique wordsmiths of our current generation, I think. Performances! They're immaculate across the board. I was saying to somebody, the saxophonist, it takes way more skill than people think to be that like chaotic with the saxophone performances. Like this is coming from somebody who spent the best part of a decade classically training to play saxophone, to get those notes exactly how he wants them. It's an art unto itself. So he's amazing. Keyboard player, again, plays a very untraditional version of the keyboard. Sometimes it's full on just like, like actual melody lines he's plinking along. Often it's quite kind of soundscapey. It's used in conjunction with the saxophone to almost mimic what's going on in Sebastian's head when he's singing or going through these various phases. It's very soundscapey and, again, non-traditional in the way it's played, but I love that. Again, adds to the uniqueness of their sound. The bass player, who I understand is one of the larger contributors to the actual material songwriting, you can tell that sort of because he's just such the linchpin of those things. Him and the drum, the rhythm section as a whole, they're not particularly flashy, but they really don't need to be because their sound has got so much charisma in other places. What they need is someone to really root that shit, bring that rhythm, give it that kind of like dancey feel to it, because you can't help but shake your hips to quite a lot of these songs, and they kind of like really root it there, and that leaves the guitarist space, like I previously mentioned, to really play around with the upper timbres, with the higher frequencies, because Sebastian for the most part sings in a bit lower apart from when he's shouting. So it really, a lot of the instruments, with the exception I guess of the rhythm and the drums, are like quite non-traditional in the way that they're performed, but they're performed immaculately because of that. Not even because of that, just as well as that, to be honest. So yeah, no, performances across the board are just, they're great. He is one of the most weirdly charismatic singers you'll ever encounter, and I've seen enough live footage to know that he does that shit live like really, really well. The only thing he doesn't do, and I've noticed, is he doesn't sing Punk Rock Loser all the way down, but I don't blame him. I don't think there's many people that could do that. Which moves me on to my standouts. This is an interesting one because, like Ghost, which I thought was quite strange, the first 3 tracks on this album, all 3 of them are the singles they released in the run-up to, and I would argue that they are they are some of the best tracks on the album. It's a weird trend, I find, to front load the album with stuff that A has already been released, and B is arguably some of the most catchy stuff. I mean, I guess you want to try and, capture people's imaginations. It's the whole, if you don't get somebody listening in the first 5 seconds because TikTok sucks and has ruined the minds of the young, then you're not going to get anyone's attention. I get that, but in the context of a full album like this, I'm probably not going to get many people who aren't, actively seeking out to listen through this entire thing as a piece of art going through it like that, in which case I possibly would have considered scattering those songs a little bit further throughout the album. But then on the other hand, the album actually does work in a really nice flow of energies going up and down. Man Made of Meat does seamlessly go into Bog Body, and then you get the bring down for Uno 2, so I get that. So maybe I just would have picked some different ones as the singles. I don't know. But either way, I'm not going to talk about those ones specifically because they're already out, but for the rest of the songs, Pyramid of Health is the one I found myself coming back to the most. That song's amazing. Again, I'm beating myself over the head with a dead horse here by saying that the lyrics are hilariously charismatic and weird and sarcastic. That kind of aspect of it is really, really great. It's got this great upbeat rhythm to it. It's this chorus that kind of feels like you should be able to chant along with it, but it's actually quite lyrically dense. It takes a second, but when you do, it's very satisfying. Pyramid of Health, do yourself a favor, go and listen to that one. Same with You Need Me, even though need is spelt with 2 E's, because I guess maybe Cyber Generation or something like that. It's kind of got a lot of spoken word in there, but it's talking about these people who over-explain shit. They kind of feel like they're the smartest guy in the room. Again, it's great. It's kind of like a bit more in the punk rock side of things on that one, but I really like that song. And if you're looking for a slower one, Medicine for Horses is also really good. It does kind of sound like a ketamine trip, but that's, I guess, the point. But again, that one's a bit slower. It's a bit more ballady. It allows Sebastian to really open up his internals and sing about and think about the sort of more self-deprecating self-analysis that comes with the rest of this album. Honestly, there is not a bad song on this album. Just do yourself a favor. It's 37 minutes and 22 seconds. You will be better for having listened to it. But yeah, no, I think that is probably the majority of my thoughts garbled in your vague direction. It really feels like a triumph for the Viagra Boys. I've not known them that long. I picked up on them as they were leaving the sort of cave world. I missed the initial release of that album. I was there when they released the music video for Troglodyte. So I had to sort of backdate and go back and listen to some of their older stuff and sort of figure out the progression. But it really does feel like, as a band, they're maturing and expanding. They kind of if you listen to something like Welfare Jazz or Streetworms, which are both amazing, there are loads of tracks on those I like, but it's a little bit more kind of raucous, and it's not a blanket rule, but I also feel like there are parts of it where just the lyric writing is less subtle and a bit more chaotic, and then you kind of move on, and then, Cave World is really good. I really, really like a lot of the tracks on this album. Punk Rock Loser is probably still my favourite of their songs. This is just another step up again in terms of maturity. It really feels like they've all kind of figured out their place in the world, and things are starting to come together, and they're all unchaining themselves, and it's just this genuine piece of art. And I don't often find myself compelled to describe something I'm talking about as just a piece of art, but that is what this album is. Well done, Viagra Boys. I salute you. Continue to do what you do. I can't wait to see you. I've got tickets to see them very soon. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. How does this stack up to previous Viagra Boys albums? Those of you in the audience, I know you're there, that have been following Viagra Boys since day one. I'd really like to know what your take on this is, so let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all of that crazy stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.